What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. To God in prayer.
We're having this conversation about the source. I like to do a little refresher here since this is supposed to be the last one, but we're going to do this. So what is true is life. And there is going on nowadays and I'm going to do this too because these lights get real bright on me. There. So I'm just going to, hey Bill.
All right, hey.
I'm just going to do that. So we got what is true is life, but in this day and age, the sources of information sometimes are hard to find. Human media, when they write down these days, I don't care what affiliation, it doesn't matter what purpose they have. Come on in. We're just going to do this thing.
We're doing it.
All
Right, let's do it.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what concept of life. If it's human media these days, there is a tendency to say, according to, for their source of information, according to a, what's the word? A source. An unidentified source, according to a anonymous source, this information comes to us. And we want y'all now to take this information from this anonymous source and depend on it. You see what I'm saying? You hear about that these days? I mean, it seems like it doesn't matter whether it's the New York Times or Fox News or the Washington Post or the Hill or Politico or all of these different media outlets, NPR. It's like there's just a whole, it's human media. All of human media has become very dependent upon sources that you really don't get to touch, feel, hear the legitimacy of. So in this discussion, I really want to emphasize the source of this discussion. And that source of this discussion is this life, this what is true, life, that which has no beginning and no end, that which is forever and we are forever in its presence, and that from which what is true appears to flow and in us, in all things, and is present, and that I will always testify to as the source. So there will never be an anonymous source in this class, in this discussion. There will always be a subject that you can turn to and say, that's what he's talking about. It's the life that is all things, and out of this life, and this life is what is true. Does that make sense? What do you think about that? How's that hit you? You know,
I was so.
you got people who say, you know, who just, I hear people sometimes say, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in things that I can't see, touch, feel, hear, taste, you know. I don't believe it because I can't see, touch, feel, hear, taste it. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. However, and the only reason why I speak of this life and what is true is because I observe it. I do see it. I do feel it. I feel it in my body and the flow of what it is. I feel touched by it. I feel, I can smell it sometimes. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, you can even smell it. And I'll get to that in a little bit. I know there's a lot of folks in the some spiritual traditions that say that, you know, when you smell flowers and you're just out and about, you know, and all of a sudden you smell flowers, you're in the presence of an angel or something like that. You know, well, okay, smell it. I'll tell you some more about that in a minute. But, and then the second, we're going to do just a little bit of review. The second is, it is human nature to choose. The first preference is to choose what is true all the time. However, when we are faced with a situation and what is true is uncomfortable, what is true is so real that it doesn't support this image that I've created for myself and this perfect being that I have created in my mind. So I will go in the experience of this image that I have created and do something that may or may not be true in that decision to simply say that I'm not going to do what's true. I'm going to do it my way. You know, simply say, I mean, it's just bottom line. I'm going to do it my way, no matter what. You know, and when that happens, more than times than not, there are consequences because it's not in line with what is true. It's only in line with the limited understanding I have of myself. You ever experienced anything like that in your life? Well, you're just going to do it your way no matter what.
It usually doesn't work out.
And most times it just don't work out, does it? In what is true, there's nothing born and nothing dies. What is true, what is not true is death and the suffering that leads to death. Death is outside of what is true. That's number 3. And that just simply is saying that life, this life, and us, this is us, we are of this life, as we talked about in the first session. And so it is very important to understand that life does not begin in this human body, nor does it end in the human body when it no longer exists. This life is forever. We're of it, and our body is simply that. It's a body experience. And our birth consciousness calls it life, but it's simply life of the body. And this can be a very comforting thought, and it can be a very scary thought. That, wait a minute, I'm not who I am. No, very much. We are who we are. And that's our birth consciousness. That's what makes us distinct and individual. However, we're also of this life, and that which is life is in us all. It is the great equalizer. It is that which is common to all that lives. And all that is. We're not separate. We're separate in society, in our consciousness, in our birth consciousness, but not separate. And so we're not separate from this either. Eternity that's always been and eternity that's always future. There's no separation from that in reality. Now, in our bodies, yes, we are distinct and different. And in our personalities, we choose and experience different things in this life in different ways. That's why what is true is very importantly to understand is individually experienced. We just talked about that. Is what is true for me is not what is true for you. Doesn't have the same context. doesn't have the same circumstance. What is true for you is not the same as what is true for me. Now, sometimes they may share common goals, but even in that, if we choose to do something, we're going to do it differently, even in the common goal, because we look at things from a different experience, and what is true will be revealed to us for how it will be done by me and how it will be done by you. And yes, and if you do certain things so many times, you can write a book on it and read the book on how to, fix a car, and that'll be the way to do that. It'll be the best way to do it. It's all connected, though, is what I'm saying. It's all connected to this life here. All that lives is what is happening now. Life does not begin in the human form nor end in the human form. That's number 4. And what is true is not subject to time. So I'm going to let Don sort of review what we talked about last week.
Trying not to speak what is not true is actually less difficult than speaking to what it is true in our lives sometimes. What was the practice last week? The homework was to choose some situations where you needed to speak what is true to some low-level difficulty or no difficulty level even, but to notice what it's like to speak clearly what is true in a compassionate way. What was that like? Compassion toward the person, but also compassion for yourself, kindness, because speaking what is true in difficult circumstances can be very, very, very tough. In speaking what is true, it's not about being perfect, but it's about listening to what's underneath the noise of the worry and the upset, and I can't believe this, and why did you do that? Underneath that, there is, in this part of the body, in the nervous system, in the spine, there's a deeper inclination of knowing what is truly, more of what is truly happening versus what you wish and what you want to have happen. Those aren't wrong, but they're just not true, because what is true is about what's actually happening in the moment. Which brings us to time. In what is true, there is no time. Now, what does that mean? In my work, time, I work on a 15-minute hour for therapy each day, and in my work. And what is true is about what's actually happening. So the plans, like my planner in my phone or my computer calendar, that I had planned for the rest of the week of sessions, and actually for the rest of the day, none of that is real. What is real is right now I'm talking to you about what is true. For me right now, that's real. The rest of it are plans. So what is true is simply in the present moment, discerning what is happening right now. Ideas about what is true, or ideas about what we want or not want to have happen, and plans are ideas. And those are mental ideas that aren't actually happening in our lives. So how do you live a life favoring what is true and speaking to what is true when we also have to plan and be places at certain times? Well, one of the ways to approach this is to make plans, of course. Just don't believe they're actually going to happen. Act as if they are, but you will know what is true when it happens. So what is true, there is no time in what is true, and there's no way to predict what it will be true, and there's no way to really control what is true. What is true is simply what's happening right now in your circumstance. So in the sense of time, time really is a creation of the mind. It allows the mind to dream into amazing ideas and creations. You can fantasize about timelines, and all these are basically helps accomplish the objectives and goals that we have. Problem is when we think that they're real, we're missing what is true in the moment. And what is actually happening that would be much better served by changing your schedule or your plans to accommodate to what's really going on, instead of trying to stick and cram what is really going on into what is true, which makes it, as we all know, that turns it into what is not true when you're trying to control what is actually happening, and it won't go that way. So, in the elements of what is true, we look upon all ideas as ideas. They're not wrong, they're not right, they're just not true. What is true is what's actually happening. And if an idea or a thought or a plan actually occurs when there's a plan, sometimes, most of the time, maybe that happens, so that's cool. But when it doesn't happen, what is true is going in a different direction. So this next week, when you, the homework is to look at how you plan your life, how you schedule your time, and notice how often what you think is going to happen and what you hope is going to happen or what you fear is going to happen goes a totally different direction. Where is it going? It's going in the direction of what is true. So the homework is to see if you can have compassion and kindness toward yourself as you navigate the busy life of family and church and work and social outings, and try to soften your view toward the planning and the plans, and favor what is actually happening and how there are opportunities to change the plans for the better. Now, in the following what is true, discerning what is true in plans, etc., I'm not saying just because the things change, just do something totally different and don't tell anybody. No, it'd be better to give people that alert. I got to work 15 minutes later tonight, so I don't have to come in tomorrow. You send a text, you let people know. But that will take kindness and compassion towards yourself and toward the others who count on you. So the path of what is true. Focus on what is true for you and make your plans and then see what happens. And we'll talk about that next week.
The emphasis on this is always, it's relative to who we are, where we are, what we're doing, and just the idea that things can not necessarily go our way, and sometimes they don't. And so therefore, how do I handle those situations when it seems to be out of my control, and what is true is not in line with what I expected, or those incidents, things like that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, changing your whole life and making, sitting there waiting, going, oh, what is next, and what's next will come. It's coming in your life right now. It's always there. It's not something you have to go wait for, and it's always there. And especially, if you're planning, your career, like we were talking about. I mean, so much of what is true is happening in the plans. In the planning part of it. It happens in that actual stage. To say, is this true for me? Would this work for me? Would this do this? And it will reveal itself. And eventually, the circumstances of your life. I was just explaining to Lee about a contractor that we had that at one time, who he made a lot of money from us putting in utility pipe, and he came to me one day and he said, "Can you go to the people, the guy who we got the equipment, the excavator from, and tell him we're going to stop the lease on this?" And so whenever, oh yeah, I thought, man, this is what's true. You know, I'm moving him from field hand to management here. I'm gonna be talking to the people who actually move things and make things happen. And so he said, can you tell him we're not gonna be using his equipment anymore? We've got another piece of equipment lined up with another company. So I went in and had lunch with the man. I said, you know, our contractor has gone another route. He's going to take another path. And he said he's going to get another excavator. And he said, yeah, so you need to come get yours. And he said, well, you want me to pick up that electric pipe laser and that tamp and the other equipment that he's got leased that he hadn't made payments on in 3 months? Okay, so that's a different story. That's what is true. You know, I was given a task that was based on, you know, I thought it was based on what is true, that he had made this decision, when in reality he hadn't made payments on it for 3 months. And the guy said, by the way, we're going to come pick that up anyway, so have it ready for us. And suddenly this contract I was working for left town and took the money and ran. And the equipment going down the road, and Tammy was 9 months pregnant with Katie at the time, and Leah was in the house and she was 5 and didn't have a job. That's what is true. You know. So the planning now starts, you know, based on what's next. You know, it's got to eat, got to pay the rent, got to survive. So the planning starts. The planning is a very important part of that, what is true. But when things don't go, you know, I had it all lined up. I had it all lined up at that point. I had a contractor who had hired the contractor I worked for, and we were actually doing work for him in a development. And he came to me and says, you guys might be looking for a job. I said, well, yeah, I got a whole crew. There was about 4 or 5 of the guys and they were, you know, I got a whole crew. We need a job. Oh, we'll hire you. We want your crew. We love the way you work. And we want to build a whole new crew for our company, since you kind of been left in the backwash here. So all of a sudden the plan was in place, you know, and what is true was working, and that was the plan. Well, when it came to the day when we no longer worked for the previous contractor, and now the first day of work for this new contractor, we were standing outside the parking lot near the office trailer where they had the development going, construction trailer. And he said, Barry, I want to talk to you. Come over here. And then we went in the trailer, and he said, okay, this is what we're going to pay you guys. And you start work, you know, at this location. And what he had said he was going to pay us was a whole lot less than what he had promised he was going to pay us when we first offered us the job. And so now I've got to go out there and tell these workers from they're just really good guys, and they're hard workers, and I got to go tell them that they're going to get paid less money in this situation than, you know, than I had promised and that I was promised. And so that was what is true. Wasn't my plan, you know. And fortunately, when I went to them and said, look guys, now here comes what is true is that this is not going to work. We really can't afford, all of us can't afford to work for this small amount of money. He's kind of got us over a barrel. We don't have jobs, so let's go to work. And in the meantime, what is true is I'll look out for people who might need a crew, who might pay them a wage that would be, you know, that could support us in this economy and during that season. And so now this all, what's next is a new next. Same thing. Now we're in a new next. So while we're doing this major construction project of piping, utility piping for some townhome project over near NC State University, I call other contractors, hey, drop by the job site and look at what we do. We're basically for hire. And that's what was true, because the deal we had made was broken, and we were working under duress. And so I offered the services to possibly someone who would, and sure enough, contractors came by and looked, and one guy came by and, you know, when do you want to start? Hire the whole crew. And that's what we did. We worked worked 30 days for that company, and we left and went to another company where we were more able to survive in this economy that we have. So that's what is true. It just changes all the time. It's never, it is always what is next. And so when we get it's not subject to time, we understand that you know, the idea is just not to be so rigid in our thinking that this has got to be this way. And when something, what is true, reveals itself and takes us out of the time that we had imagined, then it's not. You're still involved. You're still, the kingdom of God is at hand, and just relax and go with where what is true is taking us. And it's really what is true will set you free to enjoy what is happening now, even when it's not in the time we thought it would be. Does that make sense? There you go. Cannot be possessed. What is true cannot be possessed, claimed, owned, or therefore cannot be manipulated. I want to just throw out something about what is true, and part when I started this conversation about the source, I want to testify a little bit about the source. The source prevails. What is true prevails. We allow it to. And when I say something like that, it's not like magic, and I'm not trying to convince you that this is magic or it's extraterrestrial or it's anything other than life, but just somehow in the way that things go, if I follow and just simply allow what is true that comes into my heart, be a willing participant in that, it prevails over circumstances, just like the circumstance of that, as I explained about that contract. I'm going to take you back, I'm going to testify just a little bit here and take you back to how this kind of got started in me after getting a degree in religion and Greek language to study the Christianity of my tradition. I found myself working construction work to earn money and to enjoy the economy of survival. And in doing that, I kept following in my heart, being open to what is true, my understanding of God then, and following what would be the path for me to do the best that I could with what I had in the moment that I was in, wherever that would take me, just be a willing participant in what is true. Okay. Well, I was sitting on an excavator in 1999, and it was a John Deere 892. It's a very, very large excavator. And the open cut had been cut by the site contractor 40 feet down. And I walked the machine out on a ledge, and down below where they were laying pipe, a steam pipe where they had to weld it. And I had a cable on the excavator dropping it down, and it was attached to the pipe, and I was holding it in place while the welder was welding. It was a long way down there. And it was May 1999. It was hot May. It was terribly hot. And and so I had to wait for him to weld, and so I just let the machine just rest there, and I was feeling tired, kind of dozing off, I didn't want to admit to that welder, he wouldn't appreciate it if he thought I was dozing off up there in that machine holding that fire, but I was tired, and so I just, in order to prevent myself from falling out, I just called out to the life, to whatever, in my heart, I'm gonna need some help here, I'm about to go away. At night I was working as a chaplain at a local hospital. I had been accepted to and was doing night work at the hospital. I was doing day work, excavation and such as that, and a lot of things going on. Then we had the whole family at the house at that time. That was in 1999, so there was everybody but Jack. There was the three girls. So it was a full plate, and I was tired. And I said, something's got to happen. So I'm going to go on away from here. So as I said those words, I felt this rush. And it was a feeling of rushing in my body, as I mentioned before. I felt this source, and it was like a, and God uses the term, and I use the term, and Jesus used the term, there's a fountain, it's a river, it's a flow that's in us all. And I felt that flow, and I heard in my heart and in my ears, and then, but mostly whatever, I just felt and felt the hearing of this. And the words that came to me were, eat when you're hungry, drink when you're thirsty, eat the living bread, drink the living water. Let nothing die for you anymore. Wherever you go, you will be known for life. That's what I heard. And I was sitting in the machine, and all of a sudden I began to feel refreshed. I didn't feel as hot. And one of the guys that was helping me came over. He had a cup of water, and I told the guys down there, we're going to take a break here. Everybody's going to take a break. And I got down. I wasn't even thirsty. I just felt good. And I thought, what was that? You know. And I walked away, and I came home that afternoon, that evening. Actually, it was late in the evening, as it typically was. And Tammy was cooking supper, and you guys were running around. And I said, Tammy, I had this experience today where I heard this voice, and I told her what the voice said. And I said, let nothing die for me anymore. I said, so I don't think I want to eat anything that has to die for me anymore, just to see if all this is what it really is all about. So she said, didn't even bat an eye, but you heard a voice. Let's just go with it, you know. You don't remember that, do you?
I don't bear ever, yeah.
It makes sense now, doesn't it? You were, you know,
Yeah.
you were what, 19, I guess. Yeah. Okay, it makes sense now. Well, that's what happened, and that's my observation of what is true is life. And I wouldn't even put any meaning or any to that story had I not observed the things that followed that. And what I began to, and also because what is true is personal, it's individual. You know, it's what is true for you, what is true for me, what's true, and it comes from the same source, and it's always leading us toward life. It has no other direction that it's going to take us but toward life, better life. It's never condemning, it's never judging, it's never contributing to death because it knows no death. It doesn't even know what death is. It has no concept of death because there's no body in this life. It is just simply life. And we're getting, Don and I, our conversations are getting even closer to, understanding what this life really is. And the idea that it's not a body, and bodies die, but this never dies. And so it's always moving in the direction of life. And so because of that, I didn't come home to Tammy and say, okay, all of our kids got to line up. You're going to be vegetarian from now on. You're not going to eat any meat. We're going to be strict in this whole thing. And it wasn't the issue. The issue was simply what I had experienced in my life for what is true for me. And Tammy heard the story and she began to participate because she found it to be a good thing for her as well. But we didn't force it on you guys. Matter of fact, this Greg Williams one time had Jack with him. And they were going because Jack and Miles used to play together when they were young, and they were in the car. And Greg tells me this story every once in a while. I see him about how when they're going out to lunch, and they're playing and wherever they're going, and Greg looks at Jack and says, "I hear your mother or don't eat meat, they are vegetarian." And he said, "Yeah, we are." He says, "Yeah, we are." And Greg says, "Well, what would you like?" And Jack says, "Chicken nuggets." So it wasn't a forced thing. I remember back when I was out of town working in Norfolk, Virginia, and we had this group of turkey buzzers that would come into our trees in the backyard. And so we found out that turkey, and they roost and they occupy the trees, and it's not a very pretty sight, and they don't leave behind very pretty stuff. So it was kind of a health issue there. So I said, Jack, what? I was working in Norfolk, or one time I had to go to South Carolina, and so coming through South Carolina, I picked up some bottle rockets, and I said, hey Jack, just go out there and just shoot them up in the trees, and don't try to hit one of them, but just shoot them up in the trees, and they'll probably go away. Well, he did that, and I can remember one time hearing Kelly talking to a friend on the phone, and the friend must have asked her, what are y'all doing this weekend? And her response was, we're cooking veggie burgers on the grill and shooting bottle rockets at the turkey buzzards. So this whole idea of the not killing and everything, it wasn't forced on everyone. As a matter of fact, there's no actual word for this. I didn't even know the word existed. Had no clue of the word till I met Don. And Don and I, we knew each other in school in the 1970s. Okay, 78, 79, spring of 79. And then we didn't see each other until 2004. So that's like 25 years, right? So we just didn't have anything to do with each other, because he was all over the place and wound up in California, and I was in the ditch and stayed, was still here, and we just ran across each other. I looked him up on the internet one time, and I are you Don? And he went back, yeah, So anyway, he heard my story about the not eating what would die for me, and he said, Barry, that's ahimsa. Ahimsa is like a Sanskrit word that means do no harm. And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense, but I didn't know what that exactly was. Well, ahimsa. That's how it's spelled. Okay. And there you go. So ahimsa is the practice of not hurting or harming. And I wouldn't really, I still don't testify evangelistically, to it evangelistically, like, everybody needs to be on board and everything, because it may not be what's true for you. It's just what happened to me. But I did discover in that process that this happening, when I began not to partake of what had died, then all of a sudden I wasn't a threat to anything. I'm not a threat anymore. And all of a sudden things began to act differently than I had seen. Running an excavator one time, and in a big project at a wastewater treatment plant in Cary, and we were digging very deep, and next to some of the clarifiers, they were building new clarifiers that are huge concrete structures that hold the wastewater, and they put the chemicals and they stir and they get it clean, right? So I'm digging, we're putting in new pipe for the new, tying in different lines and things, and then we're down about 10 feet or so, and I'm digging along, and all of a sudden this wasp comes up, and now you can picture a excavator cab. It's got the glass on it, and the motor's back here, but it's a narrow cab, and it's got the windows like this, and I'm sitting in there, and they're like about that, I can touch them like that. I'm sitting in this big seat with my controls. Big excavator, digging down, and all of a sudden this wasp comes up in the door. You got the door open and locked up, and the wasp is in the door flying kind of in my face, and I'm thinking it's getting a little bit close. But then I remembered hymns, right? A whole new thing, right? So I'm not going to kill it, but what I do is I take my hand and I put it up there to the wasp, and the wasp is here, and when I do this, the wasp does that, and when I do this, the wasp does that, and when I do this, the wasp does that, and then I thought that was interesting. So I'm digging along, and all of a sudden, there's that wasp again flying in the window. And now I put my hand up there, and here's the wasp. And then I do this, and it does that, and I do this, and it does that, and I do this, and it does that, and I push it and going out the door. It flies away. I'm digging again, and the next thing I know, there it is again. So I take my hand and I do this, and now the guys in the ditch who speak Spanish, they're starting to laugh.
Wonder what you're doing.
Bailar con avispa, he dances with wasp, right? So, bailar con avispa. And so here we go, and then he goes away. Well, I sit, third time, sit down, grab the controls, begin to curl the bucket to pull the dirt up, and sure enough, the bucket hooks a major electrical cable and pulls it up out of the ground. And I went, uh-oh. Uh-oh. And now the electrical cable's doing this, and it's completely compromised, and I'm feeling the weight of that. Because this turns out, because I'd heard stories that if you break a cable in the wastewater treatment plant, they can't just fix it right there. They have to pull all new cable for one entire complete circuit to keep it connected, which is a lot of cable, a lot of time to do that, and a lot of money that I could never recover from. And so my knees are a little bit shaky, and I'm thinking, because I'm a contractor, he's going to miss me. I did that. And just so happens in that season, I was basically working as a contractor for him. So I was on my own to do that. So here we go. So I'm get in touch with all the powers that be, get the authorities, and they look at the cable and they go, well, you're lucky that has been shut down, because what you're putting in now is going to replace that circuit. Okay? And I thought, what is true is, is something is happening here that's not me. And so so they said, just, continue on, continue digging, we'll leave it just like that. We will not energize that circuit. It was actually had been cut off for some work that they were doing at that point. And we're going to reroute it through some of the new stuff you're putting in, and we're going to abandon that. So I get back in my excavator. As I get back up in the excavator, but next to the seat, right by my head, is a nest. And the nest has about 4 wasps on it, them big red wasps, like what had come up to me. Okay, that nest was sitting there. So one of the guys that I was working with, he hands me a paper towel, like, you got to get rid of that nest. You got to take it down and kill all them wasps. But, so it wasn't what is true for me in that moment, okay? So I said, no, I'm just going to, I don't know how long it's been there, so I'll just go ahead and keep operating the machine. So I get up in there and I'm operating the machine, and the wasps, they come and land on the nest right here by my head. And they go back and they're coming and going, and I'm operating and everything's good for 3 weeks. Now it's just for remember now, the manna that we live in is always for that moment. Okay? All right? It's not like every wasp that I encounter is going to be, in a commune setting with me, like, as a matter of fact, your mom and I were out last year in the spring. We painted the shutters on the house, and so we had to take them off. And so we actually, on the very last one on the corner there, near Becky's house, on the very last one, we were hanging, both of us, it takes both of us because my head, I can't look up. So I'm holding it like this, and she's telling me which way to go, and then all of a sudden I feel this stuff on my leg pinching me, and I look down, and I'm standing in a wasp nest, and an underground nest, and they're coming up, and I mean, they hit me, and they got me, and because I'm just a human being, and I went over to the front yard and sat down on the steps, and I thought, Tammy, be ready with 911, because I'm just going to die. Because I'm allergic. I've always been allergic to these things, right? And just to say that what is true in that moment may not apply in the next moment, but here I was standing on their nest and they were doing exactly what they would do normally. They hit me about 6 times and followed me and hit me again on the step. I mean, I was sitting there and one of them was still biting me. Well, in that vein, though, I mean, all my childhood I was allergic to them, and I totally expected to just go away from here on that one, especially after all I've been through, but I didn't, and I'm still here. Go back there to that excavator, and so these coming and going, and I'm digging. Well, I was digging on this line one time after about 3 weeks, and we're digging really deep, and the ditch is so big. It got one of these. You've seen these these pieces of equipment look like a bulldozer, but they've got sheep's foot roller. They're big rollers on the highway. Well, they compact. That's what they do, compact dirt. So the pipe we're putting in was 36-inch pipe. Huge pipe, takes a huge ditch, at least 5 feet wide. And so what we had was that ditch was open there, and some of it we were starting to backfill while we're digging a new one to get the new pipe in. But some of it was being backfilled, so the man running that roller was on the roller. I could see him, he could see me very clearly. We're watching each other, and right here's the hole that I'm digging to put in new pipe. He's covering up the pipe bar to put it in. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so he's rolling, and I'm digging. And all of a sudden, I'm just sitting there digging. One of those wallets came flying off that nest. Fast, I mean, and I went. And it went right in my hand. And it just, like a flash, it went through my mind. Uh-oh, friendship's over. Uh-oh, no more hymns. All of a sudden, but it flashed so fast, and it got like an inch from my hand, and I let go of the control, okay? And in the same moment that I let go of the control, the man on the loader yelled at me, "Stop!" He could see what I couldn't see up under me. And if I would have continued on the controls, I would have cut another wire.
It's that good.
That just happened.
Yeah.
And like I say, I'm not here to be an evangelist for what I think what is true is. I'm just simply here to be an evangelist, a bearer of the good news of what I have seen in this process. Is what was true for me in that moment. It's not what's true for everybody. Not what's true for me. 99.9% of the time, it just happened. That just happened. And my whole deal is I'm not going to deny it. I'm going to testify to it. Is that in that moment, and there was no cut wire. There was times whenever during that season, talking about smelling, and I mentioned this before, but I'd come home pretty much stinking at night because my clothes would be so sweaty and just dirt ground in. Have you ever heard the story? The song "Pantalones Duro." Pantalon duro. It's a Spanish song, and what it describes is that the guys who would come up from Mexico and help us, they would work so hard, and they would work and sweat so much, and they were in the trenches with us, and they would get so dirty, and they would have a joke when they take their pants off at night, they'd stand it up in the corner because they would stand up in the pantalones duro, hard pants. See? And that's the way I used to come home, just filthy and stinking and everything. But for some reason, when this happened, this happened to me, this understanding came, and I began to be a willing participant in it, I didn't stink. I'd come home and I'd have shirts on and layers, and I'd go, man, did she use game? But it was just a happening. It's just what happened, Does it happen now? No, I can stink pretty good these days, you know, but the reality is for that moment, for that season, I'm not trying to here to convince somebody to be or to see something that's not real, but simply to be open to what actually can be going on. And then give credit where credit's due. What is true is a lie. It cannot be possessed, claimed, or owned. I don't possess it. I don't claim it. And all I do is testify to it because it's not mine. It's not yours. It's the great equalizer. All human beings are equally in the presence of this at all times. And what is true comes into us equally in every circumstance of our lives. That's what I'm talking about. I didn't bring Google, so I don't know what time it is. Anybody know what time it is?
7:30.
I see a lot of people moving around.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do have another video from Don. If y'all want to do it, or are we ready to go?
It doesn't matter.
See, Jesus had an issue with the folks when they had, we'll do this and then we'll go. But he had an issue with the folks he was around when they came to him and they got on to him about not washing his hands. That was an issue. That was a thing that they had created, the consensus reality had created in their minds, that God loves a person with clean hands and clean food. And that if you didn't have clean hands and clean food, that you were not acceptable to God. Okay. So Jesus would come in and, his disciples wouldn't wash their hands. And it was just and they would just get all over him. And then he talked about how when he brought up David, when David was running from an army one time, and his guys were hungry, King David, and they were hungry, so they ate the showbread off the altar that they had dedicated to God, and to live and to sustain themselves, and how that broke the law, And so what he said is that if you have something that you in your mind and your consensus reality has dedicated to God and has made it absolute, then you're living a conflict. Your standards are conflicting, and that with what is actually happening, you're not in sync with what is actually happening and what this life really is doing for us. And so his term on that is that in eating the bread is that if he brought up the contradiction. The Bible says honor your father and mother, right? Or for his generation, the Old Testament law says, the law of the Hebrews says, honor your father and your mother. But if you have so dedicated the bread on the altar to be of God, and you can't feed your father and mother, then you're not honoring your father and your mother. And so he says, thus you nullify the word of God for the sake of your tradition. And so that's what I want to be mindful of and aware of, is where the things that we have in our consensus reality agreed that this is the way it will be, this is the way it will be in time and in space and in form and planning. This is the way it has to be, but to be aware of the life that is not who we are, that we are of, and that for the sake of my tradition, I need to understand that it's bigger than my tradition, that it's more alive than I can make my tradition or my way of understanding things. So it's moving outside of typical human understanding. Now, this is getting late, and if y'all would like to do this again next week, we'll do it, because we're barely scratching the surface here, and Don's got a really good video on claiming and possessing this I want to share with you. And we're just we're halfway there, and we're
I'll be here.
supposed to be done. So, okay, so that's what we'll do, and
Yes.
life awaits. Go out there, your homework is to see how things line up for you, and when they don't, how you react to it, and when they do, celebrate and get her done, and there you go. So that's where we go.
I like it.
See you next week.
Yes.
What a friend we have in Jesus all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer, to God in prayer.